Now in this video, we're going to talk about periods versus semicolons in the SAT writing. So both of these separate complete sentences. Both of these separate independent clauses. So let's talk about the differences between the two. Now truthfully, they are both grammatically interchangeable. They have an identical purpose in separating those complete sentences. So what you're usually going to find happening is that the difference of one or the other is stylistic. Periods usually represent stronger breaks between sentences. So if you're using a semicolon, usually those two independent clauses are very much related to each other, more so than you would find in any two normal sentences. Now, what that also means going forward is that luckily, SAT questions are not going to ask you the difference between two identical answers, one having a semicolon and one having a period. Because they're grammatically interchangeable, both of those answers would end up being correct. So it's never going to say, oh, here's an answer with a semicolon, here's an answer with a period. There's nothing different between the two. Now, we also have strong transitions, and transitions considered strong enough to begin a sentence use words like however and therefore, and they always follow a semicolon or period when beginning a clause. Now, just looking down here, you see that you cannot have a strong transition following a comma, and they are always followed by a comma. So we have the correct usage of it here, 43 muscles when they found semicolon, however, or period, however, comma. We have that strong transition opening up a clause. However, the incorrect usage would be comma, however, comma. That is not correct. Now let's look at the question below to get some practice in. Since the early 19th century, doomsayers have gloomily predicted that increasing populations would exhaust their food supplies in only a few decades. They claimed food shortages would result in catastrophic famines. Now, looking at our options here, if we keep what we have right now, they exhaust their food supplies in only a few decades, comma. They claimed food shortages would result in catastrophic famines. Now, we have a comma splice here. Between these two, we have another independent clause. They claim food shortages would result in catastrophic famines. So we're going to have to fix that in some way. No change is not an option for us. If we do supplies, comma, in only a few decades, we have the same issue where there's another comma splice. Supplies, and then in only a few decades, we still have a complete sentence there. So that's not going to work out. D, supplies in only a few decades they claimed, is we have a weirder comma splice because we're using food shortages as an independent clause, which doesn't really make sense. So that's not going to work. The best answer is going to be B for us. We have supplies, period. In only a few decades, they claimed. Now, if we also happen to have supplies semicolon in only a few decades, that would also work because we are separating two independent clauses with that period or semicolon, which are interchangeable.